Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has outlined tasks for his new MECs. These include improving the state of the township economy, capacitating and refurbishing hospitals. For Transport MEC Kedibone Diale, Lesufi says her first task is to scrap the controversial e-toll system. Let's unpack Gauteng plans with the National Taxi Alliance's spokesperson Theo Malele, Zwelinzima Vavi, General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions and Truckers Association of South Africa, President Mary Phadi. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps starting off in studio here with Ntate Malele. Very good evening. Thank you so much for your time. These plans around a decision on e-tolls are not new. We've heard about them since 2019. A decision has not been taken. How confident are you that the new Transport MEC will indeed scrap e-tolls?
Well, good evening to you and good evening to the viewers out there. Well, look, we can only be optimistic that finally, the chickens will come home to roost. This issue of e-tolls has, for the longest of times, being a pain in, South African necks. We have, from the very get-go, echoed our displeasure with the implementation of the e-tolls, and I am still to hear of a single South African who is in favor of this kind of a system. So it's about time. Well, it sounds like, from what we have gathered from the newly elected, Premier in Gauteng, that he is taking this serious for the very first time ever since, we've heard now from inception of a executive member that this, issue of e-tolls will be addressed. So we can only be optimistic that at least finally now there is that political will to get, for once and for all, rid of this draconian fare collection.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Mary Phadi into the discussion. Are you confident that we will be seeing the e-toll system finally scrapped?
Look, we have experience of the government, proposing things, and they tend to delay the process. But, for now, as the truckers, we are saying that anything post-pandemic that can reduce the cost of business, will lead to the reducing of costs of the operations. So we are hoping that, the process will assist because business is bleeding. And therefore, we have the issue of the diesel. And on top of that, we've got the inconsistent of the load shedding.
Mr. Vavi, what are your thoughts around this? I mean, e-tolls have been a headache since inception in 2013.
Well, we can only say we're quite happy that we led the battles against the e-tolls right from the beginning. And it was due to that mass mobilization of workers and communities that an overwhelming majority of the Gauteng citizens, motorists, simply didn't comply, and in response to the call, we made that people must boycott the payment of the e-tolls. We withstood all of the threats, and eventually government started to make some contradictory statements. The Minister of Transport clearly indicating his preference that the e-tolls must be scrapped. The Minister of Finance then clearly issuing statements to say that e-tolls are here to stay. We've seen the Gauteng leadership of the ANC, from the David Makura, the former chairperson, and now the new chairperson, the new Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, repeating the statement that they've been making over years, that this thing is not sustainable, it's not workable, people are not complying, and the compliance rates are now down to 18% according to SANRA by December 2021, down from 20% and 22% in two successive years before that. So clearly, the citizens of Gauteng have spoken, and their voice is unanimous and is unambiguous. They are rejecting e-tolls, and government have no choice in our view but to swallow its pride and to accept that not everything that they import from the first world, if we were to use that, from the developed countries, and importing stuff that is clearly not designed for a country that must be put into the first industrial development or first industrial revolution, to have proper roads in the rural areas, water, sanitation, proper functioning schools and police stations. That's our priority in South Africa, not some fancy idea coming from Austria or Europe, which clearly will not work in South Africa. We're happy that they are seemingly accepting defeat, that this thing is not going to work here, it must go.
Now, coming back to you, Mr. Malele, government's initial plan to scrap e-tolls would have involved increasing the fuel levy. But, I mean, just recently we heard Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula saying that they will have to rethink the strategy. And as you and I speak, we're right in the middle of an energy crisis, looking at electricity here in South Africa. Do you think that with that fuel levy consideration and the current climate that we're in at the moment, that the government may have missed an opportunity, because this conversation has been ongoing about scrapping e-tolls since July of 2019?
Look, from where we are as an industry, any input cost, or even rather any cost, whatever that would be added onto our operations, it's a cost too much. As it is, although we are not being, assisted by way of, operational subsidy from government side, we are finding it difficult to actually pull through our business. Our bottom lines have been so squeezed, the fuel price, and with the fuel price having gone up, even though we've seen, the downward spiral thereof, but that does not speak to some of the components that we use as in spares and, the general maintenance of vehicles. Those prices are still skyrocketing, so are other commodities. So, yeah, we are of the view that we really need some serious thinking, some serious concession when it comes to these issues that become an input cost to our business.
Mary Phadi, perhaps let me bring you into this element of the conversation here. With rethinking the strategy around e-tolls, we're yet to hear something thorough on paper, but one of the considerations that had been put forward before was the increase in the fuel levy. And looking at the current climate, what are your thoughts on how that could possibly affect the Truckers Association, trucking industry, especially also looking at the scrutiny that the trucking industry is under when it comes to safety and compliance?
The challenge is that clients are not prepared to increase the rates. So therefore, we are still working with the rates of the previous year. Look, if you are proposing that they must increase any rate because of the diesel increase, you'll have to do that once a year. And it is quite a serious challenge. And therefore, this is leading to business to suffocate. And we are already, the cost of our operations is already over 50%. And the past 20 years, it was around 35% of diesel going down. So, that's the challenge that we are sitting at. And, with regard to safety issues, we are saying that we have had the challenges of the community on the ground, and, TASA is working on those proposals. And the task team that was appointed by the Minister of Transport, we hope that they'll speed up the process of the 11-point plan. And one of the 11-point plan, which is the regulation of this industry, the transport bill regulation, the first part of it has already passed. So they are waiting for the NCOP, to finalize this matter. But the sooner we do that, it will be better, because it will give the government the upper hand to give companies a license to transport in this industry. So with regard to the issue of, the tolls, the e-tolls, and you can even go to the congestion that is taking trucks down to the harbour. Looking at those e-tolls, you don't have a choice as company. As you pass, you pay for it. As you come back, you pay for it. So you cannot even dispute. You only see a statement that you were in the certain area. So it forces itself into us as business, and it is really affecting in a very bad way.
Yeah. Mr. Vavi, do you think that government has likely missed the opportunity to pass on the cost when it comes to the e-toll system, because it's been an ongoing matter with no end to it?
Well, this is our view, and our starting point is that this is a wrong project. The government priorities are upside down. We are a developing country with massive social and economic backlogs as a result of our history of apartheid, segregation, and colonialism. The whole idea of putting up these toll gates in the air and forcing motorists to pay more than they are already paying and being squeezed by the tax system. Look, we're paying almost 45% of our salaries to the tax person, to the tax man. We're paying VAT at the rate of 15%. We can't afford yet another tax coming through the back door in addition to the fuel levy. Our bottom line is that government should have, one, introduced a solidarity tax. Secondly, the government should have had a much more creative industrial policy, in particular that will target at taxing the 1.4 trillion rands that is being hoarded by the big business. Thirdly, government should have ensured that it can collect its tax, in particular from the tax dodgers who, according to the government, are stealing between 35 and 40% of its procurement budget, which amounts to a 250 billion rands. And government should have ensured that it is keeping the resources that are generated by workers in this country inside the borders of South Africa. It should have not allowed the private firms to move up to 400 billion rands through illicit cash outflows and mispricing. That's the money that should have been used, in our view, to build roads. I've just been driving in the Eastern Cape, in Port St. John's and in Lusikisiki. You won't believe the standard of the roads in the whole of the Eastern Cape and in the whole of the Republic of South Africa. That's where our priorities. That's where we are prepared to get our taxes to fix the roads, not some fancy idea which is totally a misconception of something that works very well in developed countries in Europe. The government must stop importing policies that are designed for the developed countries and implant them mechanically in a total different circumstance of a country such as ours that is still in the food chain of development. That's our bottom line. This was the wrong project. It should have long been scrapped by the government. We've listened from minister to premier after premier making a promise that this thing is going to be scrapped. They are not scrapping it, and they must scrap it as soon as yesterday.
Very well. I'd like for you to hold that thought. My guest still joining us on this discussion. We will continue to bring you more of the views. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. We continue our discussion around some of the expectations with the new MEC for Transport stepping in the MEC Diale, stepping in the place of Jacob Mamabolo. With my guests, the National Taxi Alliance spokesperson, Theo Malele, SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, and Mary Phadi, the President of the Truckers Association of South Africa. As we perhaps round up our discussion, I mean, you have, working in an industry marred by infighting, a lot of violence, and some disagreements leading to deaths, the loss of lives, big challenges within the taxi industry. What are your expectations with the new MEC? What are you hoping to find common ground on as you continue to grow the taxi industry?
Well, very well. The taxi industry has been marred by violence, as you've correctly articulated. But our expectations are that the new incumbent MEC Diale should actually pick up from where MEC Jacob Mamabolo had left off. We at least now have a Gauteng Transport Authority. We also now have an adjudicator who can preside over issues of this conflict within the taxi industry. And this is all the works of, Comrade Jacob Mamabolo. And we are also hopeful that the issue of operating licenses of deserving taxi operators would be expedited. The issue of, upskilling, some of the, or rather most of the taxi industry players or practitioners should also come into play. We now at least have a taxi academy, which was established by Mr. Mamabolo himself. And, there is so much that he has done. He has shown an appetite far much better than any of his predecessors. So basically, MEC Diale is stepping into big shoes. And with our support from the taxi industry, we certainly are certain, we basically are certain that we will actually, move into the future with her.
Okay. And wrapping up very quickly, Mary Phadi, what are your expectations with the MEC Diale, especially with the spotlight under the Truckers Association at the moment?
Look, as per research, there's about 340,000 trucks that are on the road on a daily basis, and Gauteng is carrying more than 100,000. We are hoping that we'll have engagement with her so that we can find a solution, with regard to the challenges in the freight industry. We once had a meeting with the Premier, the former Premier, and they were proposing the war room. But, that war room did not come to pass. So maybe the regulation of this industry will assist her to engage much more further so that we can find a solution and the issue of the reducing of any accidents that are happening on the roads. Thank you.
Well, wrapping up with you, Mr. Vavi, what do you think should be some of the key areas of focus with the new MEC of Transport?
Well, our expectations remain the same, that we demand a public transport system that is accessible, that is affordable, that is safe. And we are dismayed that at this point, 80% of workers are using taxis to go to work and to come to work or to do any other business. The taxis are not regulated. The taxis are not receiving any kind of subsidy. And as a result, they are always under pressure, and it is that pressure that makes them to be a little bit not as safe as a train would have been for workers. So we want that issue to be prioritized by the MEC, just like we want it to be prioritized by the national minister. And secondly, as we speak, workers are spending 36% of their income to go to work on transportation cost alone. We're not even speaking about the price of food or of clothing or of electricity, all of which have gone out of the window or through the roof. What we expect the MEC is that he must or she must work with the rest of the other MECs and the national minister to say how do we fix firstly PRASA, and secondly, how do we fix Transnet to put the pressure off the road, because the point that Mary is raising is real. The reason why we were and we are still mourning the death of 19 kids around Pogola area is as a result of this, of the collapse of firstly of PRASA, secondly of Transnet, and which then forced everybody who wants to move staff to the harbour to use the trucks. And this is totally unsustainable. It is not only the best way to destroy the small infrastructure we have and to get our goods into the nearest harbors, but it is the sure way of ensuring that the 45 persons that die in our hospitals and to heal people who have lost their limbs and is going even further into the trillions. This is totally not sustainable proposition for a developing economy, and that's why we're insisting that the government must go back to the basics.
Absolutely.
Provide workers with affordable, with cheap, and with accessible public transport system, and fix your parastatals so that they do not increase the burden even on the taxi associations to the point that they are unable to cope with the fact that now the trains in Gauteng are 85% dysfunctional,
Yeah.
75% is functional.
Unfortunately,
in the
Mr.
Western
Vavi,
Cape.
we're going to have to leave it there for now. We're out of time, but thank you so much for weighing in on this conversation. SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, the National Taxi Alliance's spokesperson Theo Malele, as well as Mary Phadi, the President of the Truckers Association of South Africa. Thank you, all my guests this evening.